Yay! Good afternoon, LEC community and beyond. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon for another edition, our second edition of Professional Learning and Chisme. Erica, how are you?
I am doing very well today. How are you?
Good, good. I hear like you're in a really good mood. Things are
I
going
am.
right. What's
Yes.
what you got cracking?
Well, okay. So I have had kind of a weird career trajectory. So I've done a lot of different things over the time in my career. I've been a recruiter, I've been an instructional coach, I've been a professor, I've been a director. I'm now a grant administrator. I do that now too. And I'm finding that all of these different skills I can use at the job that I'm in right now. And that just makes me really happy. I'm like excited that I can use all of these things that I know to help other people.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. When you get into, I mean, I haven't had a lot of experiences with work in my life, like with different jobs in my
Right.
life, but you know what it feels like when you're like stifled, and
Yes.
then you know what it feels like when you're like you got some autonomy and like you feel good,
Hmm.
you know. Um,
Did
yeah,
you know yesterday, I think it was yesterday, was the 100th anniversary of the women's earning the right to vote? And I was thinking the other day, I am so lucky that over the course of my career, I have worked with some outstanding women that let me work and just was like, let Erica do her thing. We will smack her hand occasionally for misbehaving, but let's just let her do what she does. And so I was like, oh yeah, I am so grateful to have worked for so many like powerful women who were not competitive or, cutthroat. It's another
yeah.
reason why I like this working here with you because
Uh,
we can just be colleagues.
Yeah. And like I love a space where I can make mistakes and get like legitimate feedback on it and constructive feedback. Um, and I feel like this is it, right? Like
Mhm.
having an open forum like this, where like maybe some people, actually, I know for a fact a lot of people would be uncomfortable with like being put on the spot like this, and but like I look forward to this is how I would have handled it, or like this is how I did handle it. Like Erica, check me because like
Mhm.
maybe I shouldn't have done that, right?
Mhm.
And I remember, I think it was a week ago, I was watching a stream with Diana Munoz and Dr. Pacina was on, and they were talking about how, like, our first generation people's access to other people who have the same experiences is so limited. So
Mhm.
then, like, the fact that I have a Latina to be like, what did you do when this happened? You know, or like, am I tripping? Or is this,
Mhm.
you know, because I love my mom. She brings so much to my life in so many other ways, like, literally the best person I know. But I can't go to her with like higher ed questions or like, hey, what should I write my dissertation on? Or like, what PhD program should I, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So this is nice.
One mistake I made was thinking that one person had to be all things for me, right? That you should have just this one mentor and they're going to tell you everything and they're going to love you and pick you up and dust you off. And some people are not going to give you all of those things, right? Like this person might make you feel good. This person might make you feel badly about yourself, but they're going to give you the information that you need. And so trying to find different avenues where you can get different kinds of help is important. Sometimes we only choose the help that makes us feel good about ourselves, and everybody needs that, right? We all need some love and somebody to call you mija and make you beans with chorizo. Like you need that. You need that, right? But then you also need somebody that's like, you need to get it together. You're slacking off. Do your part. And so hopefully people can find a little bit of those pieces in these things that we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and then in some, déjalo abierto para la luz. in some stages of our lives, maybe some people do like offer the advice and the insight that we need, and then we find out like later on, like with our trajectory, like, okay, this is the advice that I kind of am seeking right now. And then knowing the difference between like, did you change your person who's giving you advice because you didn't like them telling you the truth, or
Right.
you know what I mean? My sorority sister Becca and I were just talking about this, about how we can be kind of tough on each other, and tough on people who like come and ask us for advice. And so that like sometimes turns friends off. Like they're
Mhm.
like, well, girl, you didn't have to do all that. When it's like, it's hard for me not to be that friend because I want to be honest with you and give you my perspective, like knowing that it's not the only one or the right one. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So anyway, that just went down a whole thing.
But that's a part of teacher learning, right? Is that we tend to gravitate towards people like us. We tend to gravitate towards people who affirm us because as human beings, we need that. And when someone looks like you're more likely to get that from them. So it can be hard to even get like the easy, good feeling feedback when you're the only, Latina in a building or, one of a handful in a whole district. So, uh, yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's related, but it's all connected.
You're right. And when I think also I've struggled with realizing that maybe in some situations in my life I was a token
Mhm.
Latina, or the token person of color, and it made me feel really good at the time. And then now looking back, I'm like, damn, was I really as good as like they were saying, or like did they just look forward to having me on the brochure, or on their panel, or whatever it was, right? Um, Thank you for those of us who are joining us. Hi, Rico. Rico says, or the only Latino on your team. Thank you for that. Yes. Yeah. Erica, have you had, I mean, I'm sure you've had a lot of experiences where you've been the only Latina or Latinx person on your team.
Yes. For the first, let's see, I think there was a good, I might have been the only person when I was a classroom teacher for years.
Yep.
Years. For years, I was the only like certified elementary teacher of color, period. Not just Latina, but just black, brown, anything, any kind of difference. And so, like, there's the danger of being tokenized,
Yeah.
especially I see um, Rico put up another comment about DEI strategies. And so, like, I care about diversity work. I do diversity work. That's my job. Uh, and I know that, like, you have to be careful that people are using you for appearance. So I always feel like, okay, if you want me to be your token, then I'm gonna get something out of this too, which is I'm gonna push the envelope. I'm going to bring ideas. I'm gonna ask for what I'm worth when it comes to pay. Um, so yeah, there are a lot of Latinx teachers out there who should be asking for more money upon entry into any field. The only one of the best times to negotiate for salary is upon entrance into a new job. So if you're bilingual, you should be asking for more money, for more money. So,
I love it. We got some questions coming in. Hi, Rosana. Thank you so much for being with us. Erica, how did you rise your voice in a group where you are the only Latina? Or
uh,
where you are the only
it's not
Latina?
easy. I think because I am one of five children, so I was like, everything to me goes back to family, right? I'm one of five children. My mother was one of nine children. My dad was one of six children. If you don't raise your voice, you don't get your needs met. And so, a lot of our conversations sound like we're yelling and fighting. And really, we're just like trying to hear, we're excited. Um, but Rosana, once I was at a meeting and I heard someone say this quote that really stuck with me. They said, if the people who don't care about if the people who care about kids don't stand up for them, who will? And so I'm there because I care about kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to do a lot of self-talk. Like, oh, you're going to get pushback for this. Are you ready for it? They're going to say you're too intense. That's the word that's been used to describe you before. You're intense. You're excited. You're loud.
Mm-hmm. That's what
And
Rosanna, yeah, they
yeah,
tell us.
I'm like, I am.
You're
But
right.
also, I wouldn't have to be if it wasn't so easy for other people to ignore or not see some major problems. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it is like explaining. Like I explain to people like I'm loud. I get excited. I see Rico said energy. Yes, I have lots of energy and passion for everything I do. And so sometimes I preface things with I'm gonna get excited. So don't feel like I'm yelling and know that I'm not yelling at you. If I decide to direct aggression at you, we're all going to know that I did that on purpose. Right now, I'm just excited. I'm just excited about helping teachers. Um and 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 I apologize when I make mistakes, but I don't apologize if I'm not sorry. And so a part of I think something our culture has to deal with is that we are often like rule followers. We do what our parents tell us. We respect our elders. And part of being in a dysfunctional school system is learning how to how to be okay with people seeing us misbehave, if
Right.
that makes sense, right? Like, oh, someone is not going to like me. Someone is going to be mad at me because I say this. My principal or my supervisor might be mad. And good girls don't do that, right? Good girls don't get in trouble, or good boys don't get in trouble.
You know,
Um,
you know what's hard for Rosanna says she's been received that she's very passionate. You came back to something that, like I said, it stuck with me from your class, which was if this is what's best for kids, then this is what I'm about to do. And so when we are elevating our voices, it's it's always with the intention of benefiting children, right? Like it should not be in like an egotistical way or in
mhm,
like I want to argue with you, right? Because if someone calls me, like if one of my admin or someone above me calls me passionate, calls me fiery, calls me dramatic, like you're right. I am passionate about kids. I am going to be dramatic when it comes to the fact that our kids are not receiving the equitable education that they deserve, right? Like, how is that a an insult? I know that most of the times they don't mean it as an insult anyway,
mhm.
but if it's in regards to the success and the advancement of the kids in my classroom, then I'm absolutely going to be dramatic and passionate. And what was the word? Intense. Uh,
Intense.
because I care, right? Now, here's like, we could go on and on about what people think about us, but this is a good question. Rico said, yes, but where do we go get that coaching? The practice, like when you're just starting out, I'm a first year teacher. I already have fire, energy, passion for kids and the equitable education they deserve. But how do I get that practice?
That's what I think things like this are for. I see y'all are having a conference coming up. I think a session on how to begin having difficult conversations. Because the flip side of this is you have to look around. And it took me, I'm not gonna lie and say I knew how to do this early in my career. I got in trouble occasionally. But but over time you have to like read the room also. Like, am I building allies one on one? So that when I think about one of my colleagues, Trisha DeGraff, who occasionally we would be in a meeting and she'd be like, I want to know what Erica has to say. And or I don't think that's what she like. I knew she was my ally and sometimes my accomplice. in our conversations. And so I think some of it is about building relationships with people. Um, Other times is like, if this is not being received right now, it's okay to say, you know, we'll talk about this more later. And
Mhm.
as a teacher, sometimes you have to say, okay, in the meeting, I understand, and then go and do something else under
Mhm.
the radar. So there's like, you have to pick and choose. You have to figure out what's visible, what's not visible. And the only way to start building that capacity is to talk with other teachers and educators along
Mhm.
the way. Like, this
Mhm.
is what I did. Was that the right choice? Well, what what was the outcome of that? What happened?
The desired outcome. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel really good about telling people off and then find out you still nothing came from it? Right? Like, is this about your ego or is this about kids? And sometimes those two are mixed up together. And sometimes you will make the mistake of doing it for yourself and not for kids, because you will get passionate. So when you mess up, you apologize and you fix it. But if you don't have anything to apologize for, then don't.
You're right. I think as people of color, we are accustomed to apologizing when we shouldn't. And that's just a historical, please don't chew on that. Thank you. That's just a historical, thing that happened in history that has led us here, right? I know there were times when I wanted something a certain way, either in my classroom or at my school, and I would get real riled up about it. And I'd have to step back and be like, okay, is this what Sana wants? Or is this what's best for kids?
Mm-hmm.
And because of my mindset going into teaching, and actually most of our mindsets going into teaching, which is the benefit of students and children, 80-90% of the time it's gonna be like, yeah, this is what I think is best for kids. Now you could be coached to realize different, and it's like, well, that's old research, or, well, this is what we found here at our school.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but there were times, 10, 15, 20% of the time, where I was like, Sana, this is what you want and not necessarily what kids need right now, and so chill. I do want to take a pause on that to shout out Edgar. Thank you for being with us. Is that, yeah. We do have Evolucion coming up on October 24th from 9 a.m. to 12. It is virtual this year. It is a conference geared toward Latinx education professionals, but we welcome our friends as well. If you serve Latinx staff, serve Latinx students, there will be content for you. And so go to our registration page. It opened up today. Shout out to the LEC. We got several registrations already from across the country, Erica. So it's cray.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Rico, thanks again for engaging with us. Suppressing emotion. Shout out to Elena Aguilar. She helped me understand that's a form
Mm-hmm.
of oppression. What are your thoughts on that?
It's absolutely true. I have, so there's two things here. Anytime that you have to change who you are to be heard, you need to think about why that is. Am I making these decisions? Am I using these words? Am I choosing to what do you call it? Self-surveillance, right? Am I censoring myself? Am I silencing myself because I know someone else is going to do it if I don't? And so I just give up and choose to silence myself. The flip side of that is that you might actually need to check yourself. Like, am I getting worked up over something? And so there has to be a heightened sense of self-awareness. Like, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Is this the appropriate response? Is the person in front of me hearing me? Am I trying to fix them, change them? Or, you can't really fix anybody else. The only thing you really have control over is yourself. Is this the hill I'm going to die on today? Like that, the last year or so has been the thing I'm going to ask myself, like, do I really want to go in right now and have this be the thing that I'm going to draw the line in the sand over? I used to do it for everything.
And
As I've gotten older and wiser, that I don't do that as much, but when I do it, I'm really clear about why I'm doing it. And
mhm,
so some of it is like just living and learning.
mhm.
And
Rico,
right
I feel
now,
you. Go
yeah,
ahead.
it's a hard part right now, right? Especially in the political climate. Kids are in cages. People are dying in the streets. You're like, you can call the police and they could come and hurt you.
Yeah.
And you called to ask for help. So like the world is, we are in the middle of this generation's pandemic. We haven't had one in 100 years. We are in the middle of the largest civil rights movement in the history of this nation right now. We're in the middle of trying to open schools safely, and we don't really know yet what safe is. I would not be surprised if we looked back in 20, 30, 40, 50 years and we realized that our whole society has had some kind of is experiencing trauma, like trauma that's going to be have consequences for years from now.
I think the hard part, going along with our conversation, is that it's hard to not be passionate right now. Like it's hard to not like. I'm a proponent for like online learning as of right now, like distance learning, not going into schools, and like if we're gonna get into it, I'm a look at me, I'm doing this with my hands
Yeah.
because like the fact that kids, students, and teachers' lives aren't like the priority here really bothers me. And so, like, suppressing that emotion that Rico was talking about, like, all right, Sana, okay, before entering this conversation, like, let's calm down, let's look at the facts, but it's like, no, it's kids' lives. Like you said, kids in cages. I can't have a calm conversation about that. I can't have a calm conversation
Mhm.
about after watching, oh my gosh, Immigration Nation. I can't. Like, uh, have you seen any episode of Immigration Nation?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, it is very traumatic to watch.
Yeah, that's why I haven't watched it. I was like, oh, I don't even like the first sign. But here's the thing, though. So we have like some kind of separate issues. One, people have emotions for a reason,
mm,
right? Like when an emotion is a way in which your brain is telling your body there is something to respond to. You need, like, if you feel angry, why? If you feel happy, why? There's something about the human experience that that your emotions, they give you information. They tell you that's what it means to be human, right? To feel
right.
joy, to feel upset. And I'm going to bring all of that and solutions and research and ideas. So the thing is when the people who are making decisions about us without us don't
Mm,
have the appropriate solutions and information, when I come to the table feeling intensely and showing it, I've got to have all of this other stuff with me, right? So I can't just be emotional. I can't just show that I'm right. I'm going to do that or know that I'm right. I've got to have all of these other things together.
mm.
So
I,
if I'm trying to have influence a decision, or if I'm trying to do something that I know is the right thing for students, then I have to have that and then everything else to back it up.
mhm.
And I
I
find that the process of doing that helps me communicate a little better.
like bringing it all to the table and not just like my anger and my sadness and my right, like, so speaking of Immigration Nation, I need Rico thinks it's a need to watch. And Rosana says, I started watching and stopped. Didn't like it at all. You know what? You talked about like bringing solutions to the table, and that's why Immigration Nation is difficult to watch,
Mm-hmm.
because it feels like there is no solution right now. Like my mom and I were talking about it last night,
Mm-hmm.
and she doesn't have access to the show because she doesn't know English, but I'm telling her like these stories, and she's like, so what do we do? Like what? And I'm like, no hay remedio, no hay remedio ahorita that can happen like right now. Like let's push this button, right? And so I think that's the frustrating part for a lot of people. But you know what I learned, Erica? This, like, I don't know why I just now realized this, but people's ignorance is just that. Like, if your decisions continue to negatively impact kids, but it's based on information, like lack of information that's really out there,
Mm-hmm.
like you're making that decision. So if I am continuing to run my school based on racist practices, based on the oppression of Black children, et cetera, and it's 2020, like you're make that it has to be a conscious choice because there's way too much information out there, way too much reading, way too much, right? Like
Yes, and I'm going to
yes,
say yes,
and
and
thank you.
and like the history of this nation was founded on the oppression of other people, right? So there were people on this continent, colonizers came over, took other people's land, changed the religion, forced a new language. Folks came from Europe over here because they felt oppressed over there. So there's this idea that I'm an individual and I won't be oppressed. I'm going to be free, right? That idea started as soon as people got on boats and came over here from Europe. And then they continued to do the things that they ran away from. That is woven into the fabric of this nation. Beverly Daniel Tatum says that racism and oppression are like smog. Everybody breathes it. We're all poisoned by it. Some of us can see it in the air, and just because you can't see it in the air doesn't mean that you're not breathing it. So that's why I say yes, and yes, you should know better. You shouldn't have a school founded on racist practices. But if you can't see the smog and you don't know what you don't know, and our Latinx teachers don't raise their voices to say, hey, did you know that's a racist practice? We could do that better if we don't speak up, or we speak up to the point where they don't hear us anymore, then then we're in a dilemma, right?
That goes along with what Rico just said, right? Like I think of it this way: the families I work with didn't get to turn it off, right? So like our families are feeling the pain of this oppression. Maybe some of our teachers, Latinx teachers, Black teachers, right, are feeling the pain of the oppression. And so if we don't speak up, like you said, or if we don't establish allies in this work and in this, and not just allies, accomplices, right? We've been talking about allies versus accomplices in the LEC lately. Then things won't change. Like our school system was built on white normative structures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And very little has changed in the last 150 years. And so, I know, Rico, pero vamos, ahí vamos, like we're just I think there's a fear. You know what, Erica? I think my mom, my mom was undocumented my whole childhood, and this also relates to Immigration Nation, but really on another tip, my mom was undocumented my whole childhood, and so there was an inherent fear of existing, like
Mm-hmm.
of living, of leaving home, of driving, of seeing police officers, of going to the school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was raised like you say as little as possible, you challenge as little as possible. And like you said earlier, it's a little part of our culture, respecting your elders. They have a higher degree than you, they're older than you, et cetera, et cetera. But then you add on that layer of the fear ingrained in you by being treated like and feeling like second class citizens. And so when you grow up and go to college, and then you're now a part of a school system, it takes real work to be able to say, you know what, I have something to offer here. It takes real work to say my opinions are of value and are based on research and are based on my experience. And actually, I am a demographic, if you are, I am of a demographic that is very similar to that of my students. And so some of the intersection of our experiences is there. And so validating our experiences in order to take that fire from just fire and intensity to like productivity and solutions, right?
Absolutely.
Like moving past that fear. And so, yeah, that was a lot.
We have a body of knowledge through our birth, right? In the blood in our veins from our ancestors. We have a body of knowledge and assets and skills that goes untapped, right? But if you think about who you are as all the things that make you you as something you could put on your resume, what would it be? I'm a problem solver. I'm a negotiator. I know how to get things done. I know how to be a part of a community. I know how to move between worlds, right? So when we say that, like, it doesn't seem like there's anything we can do, it's because we haven't done it yet. It's because not only do we need to prepare teachers of color with like knowledge and skills, but we need to have identity development. We need to have community engagement be a part of that preparation. We need to make sure that our teachers of color, that our Latinx teachers are cared for as cultural beings, in addition to like how to teach reading better and how to teach math better, right? So developing skills and identity and self-esteem. And then those teachers need to be taught how to be administrators and leaders, how to be legislators, how to be doctors and lawyers. I mean, like, so we have to help everyone think about who can I be 2 or 3 steps from now, right? I never thought I would be working at a state level agency. Me, Erica, Jesse and Mary's daughter, the one with the loud mouth. She helps. This is stuff that she does. Absolutely, I do it, and I've earned my place to be there. And everyone else should have the same opportunity, because if we're not doing it and no one else is doing it, it's not going to get done. So we have this we have the responsibility to grow ourselves beyond our expectations.
I think then comes in, like I talked about fear, but then is the insecurities that have been imposed on us being treated like second class citizens. So you know what I mean? Like, am I, the imposter syndrome, right? Imposter syndrome, whether you're first generation, second generation, third generation American, feeling like to this day, I am getting ready to be 28 years old and I have a master's degree. I'm like, I didn't go to college. Like, did I really do all the requirements to that, or did I like finagle my way and like somehow someone printed my name on those degrees? Like, I really, to this day, just cannot grasp that I went to college. Cannot grasp that I finished college twice. That I cannot grasp. When I was a classroom teacher, like I would sometimes sit at my desk and be like, people trust me like to run this room. People trust me. Like, and like to think even further, like parents, like I would sometimes get really anxious in the middle of the day and be like, oh my God, like there's parents at home right now that expect me to teach these kids math. Like, I don't know. I don't know math. I don't know what to do. When, like, very clearly I do. And I
Mm-hmm.
have the credentials and I have the experience and I have the knowledge and I have the skills to do it. But like this insecurity that comes from either your imposter syndrome or just feeling like there was never a way, like you said, I'm never going to be a teacher. I'm never going to have a classroom. And then you get there and you're like, holy shit, like I'm here, you know?
Right.
Um,
And then, and for me, the next thing is, so like one that doesn't go away. And you're always going to have, I will speak for myself. I think there's a very good chance that I'm always going to have some element of imposter syndrome, because it's not uncommon for me to have someone else remind me that they perceive me as a second class citizen.
mm,
Someone else that's surprised at how much I know. Like that is the downside of being different, is that there's always going to be some ignorant person that reminds you that you're different.
mm,
But that's why you need a community of people who understand you, right? Like that's why this LEC community is so important, because even though it feels like amazing, I can't believe you did this, I'm looking at you going, I didn't know what you knew when I was 28. I'm like, you're reading articles with people. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so amazing. That's what, and you,
oh,
because you don't know, like, you don't know what you look like, so you have to have people reflect back to you what they really see. So if any individual thinks that they can make it in a system that isn't designed for us
mm,
to survive or thrive in, like, you can't do that alone.
mm,
And if you're like, yes, I did it all alone, you're probably not telling yourself the truth. You
mm.
probably have people helping you behind the scenes that you're not aware of.
Yeah. So
So,
so then to wrap around to the first question Rico and Rosana, our conversation kind of started off with was, how do you rise your group in a voice? How do you rise your voice in a group where you are the only Latina, and where do we get that practice? I mean, we've had this conversation about so much. How do we wrap that around to answer that question, right? And I do want to say, Rico, y'all really impacted. Why can I not read right now? Y'all really had an impact on me tonight. Thank you, Rico. That's what this segment should be about, right? Like this
mhm,
PLC moment, like just real life stuff. And we're going through it as Latinos. We're going through it as Latinx teachers, as as cultural guardians. You know,
mhm,
we're cultural guardians. We're cultural translators. We're literal translators a lot of the time. Like all of these things that are thrown at us, and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, teach. Like, oh yeah, by
mhm,
the way, like lead kids. Oh yeah, by the way, like know and understand this curriculum to the highest level.
mhm,
Um, but then there's always this little thing that's like, this isn't the way we should be doing this.
mhm.
So to wrap this whole conversation around, what's a concrete, like, what, like maybe not one step, but like one thing you would say to answer this question? How do I elevate my voice and reach out for that coaching?
Hmm. I think I'm trying to I'm trying to think about how to answer that question, because I think sometimes I I like I do now, I do a lot of, this thought that I'm having isn't fully formed, but this is my immediate reaction. Those are things that I'll say, like, or I'll say, I just have a feeling about this, and I'm going to think about it some more, and so I can figure out why it is that I'm not settled, right?
That's a whole nother level of adult right there. Got to be able to be like, I'm not even gonna say anything for 10 seconds. Let me just
Do you
think.
know how many supervisors I had to make angry in order to get to this point in my life?
So, so this is the coaching we need right here. So we don't make these mistakes, because I'm not trying to have those awkward conversations.
Right. I mean, I see Rico wrote, code switch, right? So there is, I have a love-hate relationship with code switching. So
Mm.
there's code switching because, so like, so my glasses are like crooked or something. So there's code switching because, so like, as a classroom teacher, I would code switch when I would interact with families because I didn't want them to think there was a like a distance between us, right? You can call me Erica. But then if I thought, oh, this person might not respect me because I'm younger, I'm gonna try to like be more grown up so that they can hear me. So, but if we say code switch because we want to appear like, um,
Be
I
taken
just,
seriously?
yeah, it's one of those things where I'm more concerned, I think, with what is said than how it's said. And so by that I mean, like, let's say someone suggests, um, I don't think the kids should be allowed to talk at all at lunch. They're just too noisy, right? My first thought is that is ridiculous. Why would you not let kids talk to other kids during their downtime? If you don't let them talk here, they're just going to talk in class, right? So I could go on and on about that, right? When I switch codes, it's going to be because I'm going to present fierce facts and research about why that is an inappropriate response to students' downtime. Like, there are certain components of the brain that are only activated when a child is allowed to talk and move. If they're not going to be allowed to talk and move during instruction, then you're likely to have behavior problems at lunch. Maybe they wouldn't talk so loud and be so rambunctious at lunch if they had more opportunities to talk and move during instruction. That's what the brain needs to move information from short-term to long-term memory. Like, so
Did anyone write that down? Because
so so when we're switching codes, it's only because we're trying to make sure we open communication between us, not because I want to appear that I'm something I'm not. So I'm not going to try to pretend um to be white. I'm not going to try to pretend. I'm not going to use high level words to make other people feel like I'm smarter than them. Um, we do a lot of adjusting based on context, but if we're only teaching students and ourselves to code switch because we're not ready to challenge the systems that make us have to switch codes in order to be heard, like, I would rather dismantle, like, can we dismantle the system so code switching isn't necessary?
like
Like,
like ask ourselves the question, what is in place right now that means code switching is the most appropriate thing for me to do right now, right?
exactly. Exactly. And is it for the benefit of children or is it to benefit oppression?
Is to more specifically, is it Cookie? Is it to benefit children or is it to make other people, oftentimes white people, more comfortable?
Right.
Right? Um, so code switching, I agree with. I think in the IUE we learned about. It might have been you who told us like the why I don't
There's
know why.
there's access to power in code switching, right?
Yes.
So
So like
you
the difference between code switching and switching hats, right? Or like right,
yeah,
like hat.
you're not gonna talk this. Well, I'm not gonna talk like this in an interview.
Right.
I'm gonna go get that interview and then they're gonna hire me and they'll be like, surprise, this is who you got. You know.
but but then what part of that means that we're like being submissive to the standard, the white normative standards, right? Like I've been
we
reading
have
about
to
like what is
we have to
professional.
negotiate. We have the idea of professionalism is negotiating with the white middle class standard,
Mm.
right? So if I didn't interview a certain way, I would not have been allowed to be your professor. So that part of it is about what do I negotiate with now to have access to make change later?
That does.
See, it's a
Yeah,
love-hate thing, right?
it is. Because ultimately, like you said a couple minutes ago, like we want to dismantle the fact that any of us ever have to code switch anyway, because who really is, I think that the question comes down to like what really is normal, right? Like what really is the standard, or what should be the standard. And for so long it's been white
Whose
normative.
standard, right? Whose standard? And we keep it in place too. We keep it in place too. We if people have class differences, if um yeah, there's just like there's so much there. There's so much there. And humans, all humans have a way of like sorting and dividing themselves and saying who's better and and
Competing with each other.
mhm. Lighter is better, more European looking is better. Um, I can't tell. When I was in Memphis, I sat through a whole meeting with a group of Latinas, and they didn't know who I was or what we were talking about. But there was a code present, and one of the things, well, a comment that was made during the meeting was, um, you know, yeah, I'm from Panama, and I'm from, I forget where the other place was, but our families value education. We want our kids to go to school. The Mexican families just want their kids to go to work. And I was like, uh, mm,
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 mm. I was very, and I didn't, then they're like, oh yeah, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Mexican. Hmm. That would be Dr. Erica Hernandez Scott.
yes, sis. You better tell
Jesse and Mary sent me to college.
them. Made it
And I know how
happen.
to trim my own lawn. And I know how to change the tire. You know, so it's
You know what? And that's another characteristic of I think we brought it up last week too, but a characteristic of white supremacy is that power hoarding,
mhm,
which pins people of color against each other, to say like this Latino is higher class than this Latino,
mhm,
or like anyway, you know what? I
yeah.
could go on and on. But Rico said that happened to him as well when he moved from DC to Indiana. I think, you know what? I never thought, like, you never thought you'd be this, like, where you are now. I never thought I'd be in nonprofit this early in my career.
Mhm,
And working in nonprofit is a whole nother world. And this is a lot of what you see is power hoarding. Like, you'll
mhm,
see people who are like, feel like we're fighting for scraps, like people of color who are like, there's only a limited amount of scraps that we can go get. So like, let me be the first one there, or let me make sure I present myself like in a way. And Edgar and I have had this conversation over and over. Like, we want to commit for our organization to continue to be grassroots, like boots on
mhm,
the ground, regardless of what anyone else is or isn't doing. It's like, hey, Susana, what do you need to be successful this year? Dry erase markers? Cool, we got you. Hey, Delia, what do you need to be successful this year? Notebook paper? We got, like,
mhm,
because that's what a lot of people in our community need. And then, like, maneuvering based on what our community needs. But there's so much bureaucracy in education, in
mhm,
nonprofit, that makes people of color pinned against each other. And then it makes us feel invalid, and our opinions feel invalid, because it's like, do I even belong in this? It, it's a white supremacy characteristic, right? Like,
mhm,
it's just like interacting with large groups of white people. You feel that imposter syndrome. Like, do I even belong here?
mhm.
Um,
I always try to think about what can I create and what kinds of problems can I solve? Right? Like if I can, like there's nothing preventing me from doing research on a problem that that there are multiple solutions out there for, right? I want to figure out what can I do without money? What can what if if um if there are schools in underdeveloped countries where kids are learning in the dirt with sticks, then we can figure it out, right? If if it was illegal for enslaved Africans to learn how to read, but subversively teachers taught them how to, like, they learn how to read with books in their community, then why can't teachers with textbooks in a classroom do it? I don't understand, right? So it's possible. All you have to do is look at history and see that things are possible. So as soon as you discover all of the things you can do without needing other people's help, then people will want to come help because you don't need them to be successful. I'm not going to put my success or the success of the work I'm doing in the hands of someone else.
See, you be you be spitting stuff like truth, and then I don't know what to say because I'm like, hold on, I gotta like dissect this into every area of my life right now.
You
Rico
know, I
Rico said yes. People think it's so weird when I go out into the community to get to know families.
right. And guess what? Families know, I mean, there are families who people characterize as like not having enough of this or not being able to do enough of that. If you go out into the community, they'll show you just how rich they are. They've got resources, they've got connections, they problem solve. There's so many things that the community, these just underutilized assets that communities would offer and share if we just spent some time with them.
And our inherent opinion about a lot of the communities that we serve is that there is no skill there, there is no value there. But how valuable would it be involving our families um, in volunteering, in the
Mm-hmm.
book fair, and because of I mean, how dope to have my neighborhood that I live in right now, that I served in, um, like 20 to 30 different languages spoken right here, like
Mm-hmm.
within, like right here, and immigrants, refugees, um, fifth generation people, like just all this plethora of diversity. And if we allowed them into schools because we did not think that they were incapable and we did not think that they were invaluable or not valuable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you meant.
You know what I mean? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Rico, shout out to you. And I always just get so almost emotional to hear about teachers and educators who are doing the real work, and knowing that they're serving kids just makes me so happy, because I just get happy for those kids that have Rico as an educator and have Rosana as a community advocate,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we had questions planned for today, and like I love where our community led us with it. Because,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing is that we also have our black siblings, our black brothers and sisters and non-binary siblings out there in classrooms doing their thing too. And they have sets of skills that might not be culturally familiar to us, but we should definitely be learning from,
right.
because we're the impact of this is, there's so many things that about education that could be improved. You should not turn down an ally or a friend.
Yes. Right. Rico, don't be sorry. I only mentioned
No.
it because, if anything, thank you.
Yes. We're like,
Because
maybe no one wants to see this show.
we started today with like, Erica, maybe no one wants to hear us talk. Because but this is only our second segment, so we're
Yeah.
like, maybe we need to get like gain some momentum, you know?
Yeah.
So don't be sorry. Like I said it like as a good thing. Like
Yes.
this was dope, and like this is who Erica and I are. Like we don't know everything. We just have the experience, and it's like every time I talk to Erica, I always have my notebook, and then I can't take notes because I'm like still thinking. But like when you're hearing Erica, you need to be ready to take notes, like because she finna spit something. So anyway, no, Rico, we appreciate your engagement and encourage people to join us next week. Whatever the community needs, like I said, the LEC, Erica's the same way in her classes and the people she influences. Like wherever the need is where we go. So if we planned these questions just to make sure we had something to talk about, but like obviously this is much needed, like this topic that we covered today, and we could go on and on about like the Latinx voice, the voice of people of color, how we're stifled, how our ideas are stifled, how we have to pertain to white normative standards. Like we could write books. People have written books on it,
But I think what Rico asked us is really important, which is like, or maybe it was Rosanna. The where do you get the practice, right? Like that idea of that sometimes your voice shakes or it cracks because you are so full of emotion, and finding time to practice so that doesn't happen as often. Because I mean, like, I'm so passionate about things that I'm just like want to cry, and not because I'm unprofessional or anything, but because I feel deeply, right? And the thing that makes you good is that you feel deeply too. But we also have to be able to manage that in different spaces, because not everyone sees the way that we experience emotions as an asset. And so that's not it. So we don't want to change what we do, but we do want to be able to to use everything that we have for the advantage of students.
See, like, does this record? Because like what you just said. Anyway, clearly, I don't know. I need this. I need you to just let me carry you around in my pocket, and then you just tell me things like check me all day or something.
No. You, like, everyone has to make their mistakes, right?
Right.
I have failed a lot in my career, but I fail forward. I fail forward because I use those mistakes to teach other people. So if it sounds like I know something, you imagine all the ways I failed to reach that point. And I'm happy to give those things away. I don't want to act like uh, this. Yeah, I just like these are things I earned through battle and through failure and through wounds that have healed and are still feeling. So
Yeah, for sure. Roxana, thank you also for engaging with us. Yes, because we do face those stressors, we can educate them. What a good conversation today. Seriously, I needed it. I have a puppy and a dog who are now deciding to play. They're like, Mom, you've been on for a little too long. Like, we can't hold it no more.
yes.
What are your final thoughts or like encouragement for the next week? I know a lot of people are starting school, starting professional development. Like, any words of
If
encouragement?
if you feel pulled and stretched in too many directions, and you think there's no way for me to do all of this, prioritize the things that impact kids the most. The paperwork, the forms, those things will get done, but kids should always come first. And I thought about this earlier. This is the last thing I'll say. If it takes 6 weeks of school to build a community and to help get students in a routine face to face, then you should plan at least 6 weeks of your online instruction to get students used to the process and to build relationships with them over the computer. If you do nothing else but teach them how to log on and connect with you and read aloud and have great conversations and ask stimulating questions, if that's all you do the first 6 weeks, you will have done no harm. Don't make the first 6 weeks about taking grades, even if someone else tells you to. That should not be your priority.
I love it. I will leave us with something I got reminded of earlier, which is that joy is an act of resistance.
Absolutely.
Like happiness and being happy and seeking happiness is an act of resistance. So self-care is an act of resistance. If the only way you can resist on those days when it feels like you're just ready to give up, the only way you can resist these systems of oppression is by going and taking a nap or taking a walk or grabbing a drink or whatever your way of taking care of yourself is. Like, be resistant to the fact that, to throw a statistic out there, Latinx teachers statistically leave the classroom after 3 years, where the national average is 5. That means we're stressed. That means we feel out of place. That means we feel isolated. So use your joy as an act of resistance. As Erica said several times today, use your community, use the LEC community, use me. I'm here for you. All the good vibes to all the educators out there who are doing all the work, and educators in every sense of the word, parents, parent advocates, all of you. Thank you so much for all that you do. Erica, this was fun. I always love having conversations with you. I miss you.
Oh, I love you too. We got this.
We got this.
This may seem like just a little video, but this is an act of resistance, right? This is how the revolution begins.
Say that. Thank you, Rico. We're here for you, man. Rosana, we're here for you. We're here for your parents. Erica, thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, submit your questions next week. Susana at latinxedco.org. Nothing is off the table. Please let us know what you'd like to know or what you'd like us to discuss, and we will see you next week.
Okay.
Bye, Erica.
Bye.
See you, everyone.